Chapter 1143. The break week is over and the first battle of the final war continues. Unofficially, nothing's been confirmed, but there was enough last chapter to say that it has begun, so unless specified otherwise, we are now in the final war. So, I will go into each chapter with a level of enthusiasm and excitement that is appropriate for an event of that magnitude. We open back with the situation at the Walrus School where Saul attempts to grab one of the kids, but he gets hurt by some invisible thorns that are wrapped around her. So even though they were warned not to touch the kids, he did it anyway. I can get why he did it though. Nobody has any idea what's going on. Something like grabbing one of the kids shouldn't be an issue. It doesn't sound like it should be, at least. And also, it's not like they're in a situation where they can take liberties with their actions, So even though he was warned, he might as well have tried, cover all bases. Back in the village now, there is a giant firefighter squadron who's dealing with the fire, but their ship, their cloud ship, the Sval, is destroyed by the Draugr, the undead soldier from one of the kids' nightmares. And it didn't fully occur to me last chapter, but these things are enormous. Like, they make the actual giants look like ants, so they must be hundreds of meters tall. We see everyone's reactions to it, all of the giants at the party, the Straw Hats who are there as well. Everyone's in shock. The giant shock specifically I'm interested in because I'm of the opinion that some of the kids' nightmares, the Draugr included, are aspects from Elbaph's mythology or ancient past, so these giants may have read about these things before and now they're seeing them in person. And to a forest where the Holy Knights are dining on a very fancy table, they couldn't just have a picnic or something. I guess that's beneath them. They would never sit on the floor. But anyway, they're watching the show unfold before their eyes, and I want to make a correction from last chapter, 1142. We saw all of the children's drawings come to life and start causing chaos, and I thought it was Sommers who did it. It was his ability that manifested them. But that was wrong. I misinterpreted that, and this chapter does clear up whose abilities are whose, and we see Sommers' actual ability now. The thorn fruit, where he assigns people as his targets, and if anyone were to touch them, they are to be attacked by thorns, and the stronger the love someone has for that target, the more painful the thorns will be. And the hints were there because, going off of his character design again, he has the thorny knuckle guard on his sword and he has the rose on his chest. Even his facial hair kind of looks like thorns, so it does fit his whole aesthetic. But also remember how one of the teachers, Wolf, was found heavily injured, and how it was also said last time how they can't touch the kids. This clears up he wasn't attacked by one of the drawings, but he would have went to stop the kids from walking away, and then he was attacked by the thorns. So Elbaph as a society, I know the island is huge, it might be the biggest island we've seen in the story, but we've only seen the western village so far, and from my point of view, it does seem like everyone knows everyone. It's a very tight-knit community. So the teacher, Wolf, probably knows each of the kids' parents, and on top of that, with him being their teacher, he was obviously going to care for them massively, which is why the thorns did so much damage to him. But that does make me think, because Colin is not among the sleepwalking children. We saw him at the party, so he is safe for now. But what would happen if he were to be put to sleep and such, and Ripley, his mother, went to touch him? How badly hurt would she get from that, especially seeing how badly Wolf got hurt? Like, I assume she is stronger than him. If Ripley went to grab one of the school kids that Wolf touched, would she be put in the same state that he was, or would it be something like because she's stronger she can handle that level of pain better, or is it proportional, where the individual's strength doesn't matter at all and they'll both end up with the same injuries regardless? And back to the Colin thing, if we do go along with the idea that strength doesn't matter and Ripley were to try and touch him, she'd surely be put in a near-death state, wouldn't she? Because that's her son. She has an infinite amount of love for him, but that said, I'm sure Haki does counteract it. So if someone were to grab the children with armament Haki, Saul for example, because he's in the area, he's got armament Haki, and he's already attempted to grab one of the kids without armament Haki. I may be overthinking it. I doubt these discrepancies will be addressed, or if they even matter at all. Let's see how it plays out, because at some point Sommers is definitely going to assign a major character as his target, and another major character is going to get hurt by the thorns because of it. Then over to Killingham, who has the dragon fruit mythical type model Kirin. So that community prediction was spot on. The dragon fruit is also 100% the one we've seen the most of in the story. We had all of the ancient zone dinosaur models in Wano, and now this. Although it's funny how the only actual dragon in the story isn't from a dragon fruit but a fish fruit. And also it's his power, Killingham's power entirely, that was in play during the last chapter, with both putting the children to sleep but also with the material materialization of the drawings, the kid's nightmares, so his entire power revolves around sleeping and dreams. I wonder if that's what the mask is for. It's an oxygen mask because with his power he's asleep all the time, so he's narcoleptic. The oxygen mask helps him with that. And I'll tell you what the best thing is that's come from learning all of this. It's that each member of the group that's here, each of their abilities are being used simultaneously for them to carry out this plan. Killingham put the kids to sleep and manifested their nightmares. Sommers is protecting the assets to deal with outside interference, and Gunko is using her arrows to lay the path for them to follow. And that's just so cool because it's not often we see devil fruit powers used in tandem because they're all so wild and unique that it's probably really difficult to come up with ways for them to be used in combo. But it's been achieved here, and I really like the chemistry we've got going on between them right now. And Sommers is a sick and twisted man. He starts by talking about how it's a game with parents and kids, how a parent will take the pain of his thorns regardless so they can hold their child, which is messed up in its own right, but he's a celestial dragon, so that kind of expected from them. It's when he starts talking about kids having to witness their worst nightmares in reality, which is watching their parents die while they let out screams of their own. This is where he stands apart because for the average celestial dragon, they definitely take life way too lightly, at least other people's lives. They'll shoot someone for the smallest inconvenience. Killing someone, killing a commoner, to them it's whatever, because that's how they've lived their lives, that's how they've been raised. And honestly, they 100% don't really understand. They're too dumb to understand the magnitude. But Sommers here, he knows what he's talking about, he knows what he's saying, and he's reveling in it. He knows, he's into it. He's talking about making murder sensational. I can see why he has all of those medals. He probably got rewarded for how sick in the head he is. And Gunko is making the kids walk the main path through the village, so they aren't even trying to be secretive about this. They're rubbing it in the giants' faces that they are powerless here. Gunko is just as twisted as well. That's the difference. They have real intention behind their heinousness, their cruelty behind their cruelty. Sommers also mentions the monsters that Killingham manifested. He refers to them as MMA. The chapter doesn't say what that means, and honestly I don't have any guesses either for what it could be. They keep talking about it as a game, and Sommers says that it's too easy for them and that the kids will be at the ship in no time, although Gunko does warn him and say something could still go down because the Emperor of the Sea, Straw Hat, is also on elbaf. So they have, or at least she has taken that variable into account, and they are expecting him to get involved, which is very ballsy of them because if they're still fine with carrying out their plan even when they know Luffy could show up and start causing chaos, is it their confidence or arrogance that they aren't that worried about him being here? And it's interesting how Gunko didn't bring up Loki because she definitely thinks he's still fully chained up, and at death's door little does she know all of his chains are almost off and he's about to receive some treatment. And when she finds out after what she did, she better be very afraid. And Sommers again at it with the death talks. He's casually talking about getting a new group of kids if these ones die, so yeah, these guys are terrible people, but for the story it's great. We see them eating in the forest and they don't have any salt, and Killingham uses his powers to put Sommers to sleep, Sommers who was thinking about the salt, and he pulls it out of his dreams. So this is an ability that offers a lot, and I can see how it may get out of hand because if it centers around dreams and we saw the children's nightmares before, then it's a lot like how Luffy's abilities are only limited by his imagination and he can materialize that. It sounds broken, dreams into reality, and the whole getting out of hand thing really depends on what we see the drawings doing, because there's a Loki one and there's a Nika one, but how strong will they be? Will Soul and whoever else be enough to handle them? The Yomangander was taken out in 2 hits only, so maybe. Let's say there was a situation where someone was asleep and they were dreaming about a devil fruit. How would that play out? Would a fruit materialize, but only one that looks like the devil fruit but without the actual powers? Or would it straight up just materialize the devil fruit? I'm using this example because obviously this isn't going to happen, but it's a good way to kind of put into context how broken this power could be without anything holding it back. Maybe the accuracy and the strength of whatever he materializes depends heavily on his own capabilities, where something stronger or much more powerful would put a much greater strain on his body and it would drain his stamina much quicker. Now back to the underworld with Loki and Luffy and everyone else. Luffy hits Loki with a soft blow and Loki does pass out because of it, so he was very much on his last legs. He must have used all of his remaining strength with the hammer swing to the tree. It was gonna happen eventually if we're being realistic. After all the damage he took from Gunko and Shamrock, it was a miracle that he was able to do what he did last chapter, but it was only a matter of time before he faded. I did get carried away myself. You know, when we first saw him standing up a couple chapters ago I thought he would almost instantly pass out, but he didn't, and when he didn't I thought we were gonna get a fight. But no, he is down for the time being, because he still put up a really good showing with the hammer swing to the tree and the lightning bolt and everything, although doing all of that probably brought him even closer to death than he was following Shamrock's attacks, because you know, the pain and the exhaustion's piled up. And Luffy asks to patch him up. She will be roped into participating in the biggest taboo in the history of this country probably. You know, we can see how genuine Luffy is being here as he's asking her. So you know what, if Luffy trusts Loki enough, then so do I. Although having said that, everyone praises Luffy's emotional intelligence as one of the best parts of his character, but if there was one other character who could play with Luffy's emotional intelligence, then that would be Loki, because remember, the Loki from mythology is a trickster, and with him claiming to be the sun god, he seems like the perfect guy to mess with Luffy if he does end up being a bad guy. Also, we see Loki's horns properly in full. We can see them from their roots, and they look insane. So think about this. Loki is the size of an ancient giant. So let's say he's the same size as Oz. His horns are genuinely as big as Kaido, and one of them is bandaged, so I wonder if it's broken or damaged from his father, maybe, or Shanks. And we get our first flashback of the arc where we see Hirudin as a kid, and Loki's eyes are even bandaged up here all those decades ago, so I wonder if it is just an aesthetic choice, but it feels like something that is more important. We see King Harald in the flesh for the first time, not just as a portrait, but he is still in shadow, but his horns are there, so he hasn't pulled them out yet, so this may be before he became a pacifist, or maybe he was already a pacifist, who knows. And he speaks to both Loki and Hirudin, calling them his precious sons, who will both lead elbaf. Harald is, well, cause we know so little about him, it's even harder to discern his true nature than it is for Loki, I think, cause at least with Loki we've interacted with him firsthand, but that's not to say that Loki's allegiances are clear either. Now, being pushed around by your younger brother who is, by human standards, about 6 years younger than you, that is just sad, Hirudin. Where was your backbone? That being said, this specific younger brother was born with what looks to be near 100% pure ancient giant blood, so that kind of negates the age gap when Loki was literally born with better genetics than Hirudin. Loki's already bigger than him, so you can't really blame Hirudin for being beaten, and Loki's using a weapon that's very similar to Kaido's Carnival, that spiked club, and I really want that. Well, it's not really a theory, it's more like an idea. It's been pointed out how Harald shares heavy resemblance to Kaido. Then there's this spiked club thing, Kaido's an Oni, and I believe that Onis are blood related to the giants and ancient giants. There's his attack conqueror of 3 worlds, Ragnarok. I've said it before, I love Kaido's character, and I would really like it if he were to be at all relevant in this arc, although I also know that I may be clutching at straws. Would it be crazy to theorize that Kaido is Harald's other son, like a third son? Because I can't remember Kaido's exact age, but he would only be like 4 or 5 years younger than Loki, I think. And yes, he is from the Vodka Kingdom, but we know that King Harald travelled. That's how he met Hirudin's mother, so it could be a similar situation here. And let's say Harald was the villain, it's very villainous to abandon your son in a random kingdom. Also, on the topic of Loki's weapon here, that means he hasn't been given the hammer Ragnir just yet at this point in time, which makes sense because he's a kid and that hammer is massive, so he probably couldn't wield it yet, or maybe it wasn't made yet. Like, what if there's a giant blacksmith who some point down the line in between the present and this makes the weapon? Or maybe it's an artifact that's been around for ages and Loki just took it for himself. And as for his words, the words he has for Hirudin, he is really cutting deep here, calling him a weakling, how he wouldn't accept him as his big brother, calling him a bastard, how he's not a true son, his mother's blood is tainted. I get why Hirudin hates him so much, it's completely understandable. And I take back what I said about Hirudin having no backbone, because he was just a kid then, and in the present he hasn't backed down a single bit when Loki has gotten up, swung the hammer and everything. He was actively trying to get him to stop actually, so I have to put some heavy respect on his name for that. He probably knew he couldn't do much, but he still stood firm. I will say again though, we still haven't heard anything about their mothers yet outside of the little bit on Hirudin's and the fact that Loki's is dead. If she had lived, maybe things would have been different. It kind of leads back to Oda's reasoning for why there aren't many mothers in the story in general, because a mother wants to protect their kids from harm, so they wouldn't let them go out on such a grand adventure. If Loki had his mom around when he was growing up, who knows how he would have developed. But also, seeing him bullying Hirudin, every little new thing we learn about this guy shifts the way I view him. He's introduced, oh, so he's the bad guy. We learn about Harald, oh, maybe not. Maybe he's the good guy. Then we learn something else and so on and so forth. Hey, maybe he's not so bad. Oh no, actually he does seem quite bad. Well, actually, if this is how how things played out. Oh, never mind, he did those evil things, but then there's this and that, so he doesn't seem evil. Oh, well then, he bullied his brother. Well, he was just a terrible and awful child then. I keep flip-flopping between what his true nature actually is and what he says at the end of the chapter throws a spanner in the works for the 1000th time. So I'm gonna say Loki is someone with good intentions, but he has been greatly misguided and misunderstood at every crossroads in his life. I'm gonna stick to that very vague and generic statement. And back in the present, Hyrudin is talking about wanting to get revenge for his father's murder, and he's ready to kill Loki there and then, but he is held back by Rhodes and Stanson. He's probably thought about this moment since the day his father died, and we end with Loki waking up from his little power nap. Or he was already awake and conscious because he heard Hyrudin talking, and he even tells him to do it, although he says it very calmly. That's probably due to him being so heavily injured that talking loudly would just cause him more pain. But also, do you think it could be a sense of guilt from Loki? He tells Hyrudin to look at the whole forest, which sounds like he's telling Hyrudin to judge the situation fairly and with all of the relevant information rather than just with his own view and with his own confirmation bias. And he asks if Hyrudin thinks he killed their father because he wanted to, and also that he's sure that they won't believe that either. So there's that spanner I was talking about. It sounds very much like he had a very good reason for killing Harald, and that's also confirmation that it was him who did it. There wasn't no secret plot from Jarl or anyone. And once again he's being painted in a better light. So Loki, what are we going to do with you? The specific wording, because I wanted to. So he felt that he had no choice on the matter, he only did what was necessary for the greater good, which would fit with Harald being in cahoots with the world government. He didn't want to kill his dad, but he had to for the betterment of elbaf. But at the same time, Harald doesn't have to be the villain in this scenario based on that wording. What if he was being controlled, used against his will? So Harald told Loki to kill him, or else something bad may have happened. Whenever some new information comes to light about this whole situation, it's spoken in riddles. But I do have some predictions for the next chapter based on this ending here. It sounds like the truth is about to be revealed, and it seems like the perfect transition into a proper extended flashback, entirely from Loki's perspective, covering his entire life, although now that I am saying it, that is a lot of content to cover and it's still very early on in the arc, but all of the relevant parties to hear the story are here. Loki, Luffy, Hyrudin, they're the main three. Jarl isn't here, but that's fine. I do think it works out if he were to find out later separately. Plus we already know the key details from Jarl's point of view, and this way we can have the two brothers' perspectives bounce off of each other so the pieces can be properly put together. The truth of Harald is probably what's most important here outside of Loki exonerating himself. It would be great if Gerd was able to get Loki fully patched up by the time this hypothetical flashback were to end, so we are instantly ready for some action, but that depends on Loki's recovery capabilities, Gerd's doctoring abilities, and how long this flashback lasts. But regardless of how this does play out, the truth is coming very soon, and the next step after that, not including the fighting, is most likely gonna be convincing the rest of the country as well. So phase 1, free Loki, is mostly complete. On to phase 2, Loki's trial is about to begin.